You know, in the crypto world, there's this one golden rule everyone seems to follow. Scarcity creates value. So it's kind of wild that one of the biggest networks out there, Pi Network, is doing the exact opposite. They're refusing to burn coins. Now, why would they do that? Well, to really get it, we've got to take a trip back in time and look at some of the epic collapses that rocked the crypto space. These are the stories that taught some really hard lessons. All right, let's dive in.
And this quote, wow, it just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the two sides of crypto. On one hand, you have these incredible, dreamlike possibilities. But on the other, you have these devastating collapses. And you know, every single time one of these projects goes under, it all comes back to the same thing, really. It comes down to trust. Who did you put your faith in, and at what point did that trust just shatter? Okay, so let's set the stage. We're going to look at two huge collapses that basically defined two completely different eras of crypto. And trust me, these aren't just stories about people losing money. They're cautionary tales about how quickly trust can be completely obliterated. Yeah, this chart here really puts it all into perspective. You've got two completely different time periods, right? Mt. Gox, way back in 2014, that was really a failure of the tech itself. I mean, we're talking weak security, terrible management. Then you jump to FTX in 2022. The tech was slick, everything looked great on the surface, but the failure there, it was all about ethics. Just pure financial recklessness and, let's be honest, lies. So different problems, different decades. But for the users, the end result was exactly the same. Trust completely gone.
$460 million. That's how much just vanished when Mt. Gox went down. Now, I know in today's crypto world that might not sound like a headline-grabbing number, but you have to remember, back in 2014, this was an absolute earthquake. It shook the entire industry to its core. We're talking billions in today's money. It was a catastrophe. And then there was FTX. The number is just staggering. $8 billion. Just gone. Poof. It was a brutal lesson for everyone. It proved that all the slick marketing, all the celebrity endorsements, and all the fancy tech in the world mean absolutely nothing. Nothing if you ignore the most basic, fundamental principles of trust and responsibility.
So, okay, we've seen the disasters. But if you look past the shocking headlines, what's the real story here? What are the common threads connecting these failures? Let's really dig in and diagnose the underlying problem.
It really boils down to three big things, and you see them pop up again and again. First is just how fragile trust is. When you have one central group in charge and zero transparency, well, that's a recipe for disaster. The second problem, so much of the crypto space is just focused on speculation. You know, pumping the price, getting rich quick, instead of actually building something useful and sustainable. And finally, there's this huge information gap. Users like you and me are often completely in the dark about what's really happening behind the scenes. We have no way of knowing if our money is actually safe. And all of this, it leads us to the single most important question, doesn't it? After watching the same nightmare play out over and over, the same collapses, the same broken promises, how in the world do you build a financial system that people can actually trust? Okay, and this is where the story pivots. This is where Pi Network enters the picture. Because the whole project, from the ground up, was designed as a direct answer to these historical failures. They're proposing a completely different way of thinking about and building a digital currency.
And at the heart of it all is this one core idea. It's about practicality and fairness. It's not about speculation. From day one, the entire philosophy has been to create something that people can actually use in the real world and to make sure the system is fair for everyone involved. It's a conscious step away from that whole speculative hype train that we've seen cause so much damage.
So how do they do that? Well, the key piece of the puzzle is what they call a community-driven ecosystem. Think about it like this. Instead of having a single company at the top calling all the shots, like a Mt. Gox or an FTX, the value is actually created and shared by the millions of people using the network. These are the pioneers. And that structure, that decentralized idea, is specifically designed to get rid of those single points of failure that brought those other guys down.
All right, so that's the big picture philosophy, but how does that actually play out in the real world? Let's zoom in on one very specific and frankly pretty controversial decision they made, Pi's flat-out refusal to burn its coins.
So first things first, what does coin burning even mean? It's actually pretty simple. It's the act of intentionally and permanently destroying a bunch of coins. They get sent to a special unusable digital wallet, a burner address, that nobody has the keys to. Once they're there, they're gone. Forever. Out of circulation for good.
Now you're probably thinking, why on earth would you destroy your own currency? And it's a fair question. The logic behind it is just classic supply and demand. If you reduce the total supply of something, the coins that are left become more scarce, right? And that scarcity can push the price up. It can also send a signal to investors that the project is economically stable. But, and this is the most important part, the number one goal almost every time is to pump up the speculative value.
And this chart really lays out the two different worlds we're talking about. On one side, you've got speculative value. This is all about creating artificial scarcity, like through coin burning. It's designed to benefit a smaller group of holders who are really just focused on watching the price go up. But then you have utility value. This is completely different. It's not about scarcity, it's about widespread use. Value is created because lots of people are actually using the currency for real things. This benefits the entire ecosystem because the focus is on function, not just price. And there's no question which side Pi Network is on. They are all in on utility.
So when you understand that, Pi's whole no-burn policy makes perfect sense. It all ties directly back to their main mission. First, their goal is to be a global currency for potentially billions of people. To do that, you need a lot of coins in circulation, not a tiny, scarce supply. Second, they truly believe that real, lasting value doesn't come from a gimmick like artificial scarcity. It comes from millions of people actually using the currency for everyday transactions. And finally, it really is about fairness. They want to avoid creating a system where a tiny group of early holders gets super rich while everyone else is left behind.
So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, it becomes crystal clear. Pi Network's entire strategy, especially their choice not to burn coins, isn't random. It's a very deliberate, very conscious answer to all those failures we saw in crypto's past.
And this right here, this quote just sums it all up perfectly. Pi is actively trying to learn from the mistakes of Mt. Gox and FTX. You know, the terrible governance, the obsession with speculation, the complete lack of ethics. They're trying to build something fundamentally different. And that's why their decision not to burn coins is so important. It's not just some technical detail on a white paper. It's a statement of philosophy. It's a commitment to a vision of a digital economy that's more practical, more sustainable, and a whole lot fairer.
And that leaves us with the big open question, doesn't it? Can a currency that's built on community and real-world usefulness, can it truly create a fairer economic future for everybody? Can this approach actually work where so many others have spectacularly failed? You know, the answer to that question won't just decide the fate of Pi Network. It might just show the entire crypto space a new way forward. Thanks for tuning into this explainer.